So my guest today, Ashley from Drata, and one of my favorite people. We learned a lot from Ashley when we first started at Immersa and started figuring out who we would want to work with in terms of establishing our SOC 2 compliance policies and get certified. And you were one of the first people we talked to as part of that process, Ashley. And why don't you take a moment to introduce yourself, and we'll talk a little bit about you, and then we'll talk a little bit about what Drata does.
Yeah, it's so great to be here. I definitely remember that first call. So I love we're coming full circle here. But my name again, Ashley Hyman. I'm the VP of Customer Success at Drata. Within my team at Drata, we have what we call 4 pillars. And so I have customer success managers, technical support representatives, solution architects, and then something very unique to us, we have a team of compliance experts. So they're former auditors, security professionals, to really support our customers in the complex journey they're taking in building their security and compliance posture. Little background on me that's kind of interesting is I actually started out in public health research, in behavior change, behavior modification, and that is what CS is. People don't realize that, but that's truly what it is. I ended up moving out of public health research into tech via a company called Portfolium. It was an ed tech startup, basically an e-portfolio for students so they could truly showcase what they were doing in the classroom to get jobs when they graduated. And I was an early team member there, probably the 8th team member, and I built customer success from the ground up. And I bring that up because those founders are actually the founders of Drata as well. And so I worked with them to build out customer success at Portfolium. We were eventually acquired, and you know how acquisitions work. Everybody moves on about a year later. And Adam, our Drata CEO and Portfolium CEO, called me up and said, "Hey, we're starting something new. You want to do it all over again?" And I jumped at the opportunity. And security and compliance was a new area, but I knew coming from a startup, it is absolutely necessary to scale your business. And so, you know, small businesses, they need to start to be able to show their security posture and that they are doing things in a compliant fashion so their customers trust them. And so that's what we do. We help customers to build trust with their customers and to truly scale their companies to the next level.
Awesome. So I am very curious to learn the motivation behind going from public health research to a tech startup. Like, I see very interesting shifts in people's careers, and I'm always curious to learn what prompted that moment for you.
I'll just be very direct about what it was. When I was working in public health research, you know, it is a place where there truly is a ceiling, and it doesn't have to do with gender at all. It's more, if you don't have a PhD, you aren't going to really get anywhere in academia. And so I had my master's in public health, and I decided I had enough student loans from that. I didn't need to build in more by getting a PhD. And so I thought, okay, I was an adjunct public health instructor. I had worked on NIH funded studies where I was actually working with, it was interesting, doctors. So I would go to doctors' offices and help them implement a health promotion program. So it really was customer success. We had a program, they were creating change within their offices and how they talked to people about health. I trained them on how to do that. And then I'd go back and evaluate how they were doing. And so when I decided I want to make a change, tech is the hot place to be. And I started looking for tech companies that were either in public health or in education. And so I found Portfolium working with universities. And I went into that interview being like, they probably think, why is this person applying to this job? The person that interviewed me said, "Oh, we know you know so-and-so, and they passed just your resume. So we talked to you because of that." And I was like, perfect. But then I explained to them really how I knew how to work with educators. I knew how to talk to them. I'd been in that space. I knew their processes. I knew their budgets and how those worked. And so I said, I can talk to these educators the way you guys don't know how to as engineers and entrepreneurs. And they were like, that's true. We don't know that.
Yeah.
So I started with them and then made that transition. Interestingly, I actually started on the sales side, but a few months in, our company said, we have all these customers now, and this was portfolio, like, who's going to take care of them? And I was like, I think I could do that. That was more up my alley than the sales side. And so that's how the transition happened.
Awesome. Yeah, so we have, so it's really interesting. I think we have something else in common here, which is I noticed you're from Kansas. I'm not from Kansas, clearly, but my first job was in Nebraska, next state over. How did you make the journey from the Midwest to the West Coast? I know you've been in San Diego for a long time. How did that come about for you?
Yeah, it was actually when I was in my undergrad at the University of Kansas. I'd grown up in Kansas. I'd always been in Kansas. I went to the University of Kansas. I was in my undergrad, and a professor honestly said, hey, we have this internship in San Diego. Who wants to apply? And I was like, going to San Diego? I'd never been to San Diego. It sounded like, paradise. And so I went, the internship was at UC San Diego. It was actually teaching physical activity and nutrition to kids. And so I came out for a summer and basically went back, got all my stuff and moved back out to California. So I've been here ever since. I then got my master's in public health at San Diego State. And obviously you've heard the story from there.
Yep, got it. Very cool. Okay, so Ashley, now we obviously know what Drata does because we are one of your customers, but tell us, tell everybody here a little bit more about what is Drata and why should they care?
Yes. I think that's a fantastic question. So Drata is a security and compliance automation tool. And you're thinking, what does that mean? Those are a lot of words that don't mean much together. Really what we do is we help companies to demonstrate their security and compliance so that they're doing things the right way. Traditionally, security and compliance has really been measured in spreadsheets and screenshots. And of course, part of Drata is one of our features is that we can help you to get a SOC 2. We also have expanded to 15 other frameworks, but we have companies and customers that come to us that just say, hey, I need to prove to investors, I need to prove to customers that we take security and compliance seriously. How do I do that? Small companies, early companies, they might not have a security person on their team. Usually it's a CTO who's getting to moonlight in security and compliance. And so what Drata does is allow you to connect your tech stack to our system. Every single day we run tests against your systems, and we're able to really highlight to you things that you may have missed that impact your compliance and really your company's security and the way that it handles customer data. Just like we do, the most important thing you can do is to build trust with your customers that you're protecting them, you're protecting their data. And so Drata is a system that helps you to do that. Really, I always say kind of in the background while you continue to build your product. So you can probably attest to, you guys are continuing to build your product, but it's connected to Drata. And so let's say you spin up a database tomorrow and you forget to set up daily database backups. Drata would alert you, hey, you need to come back and you need to fix this. And so we do that, but then all of the tests that we are running and the details and the evidence we're helping you collect can then support you moving towards a SOC 2 with an auditor or getting your ISO 27001 certification. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, look, it's very simple for us. When we started working, Immersa was started 2 years ago, and we're in the business of taking customer data, combining it with product data, and creating signals for CS teams. And what was interesting is the minute we got into this business, we immediately started hearing from our customers, like, how are you going to protect my data? And to me, that was a pretty, we looked at the market and we looked at who's the leader, and we reached out to you guys and started working with you. And I think I've done this before in a previous life with no outside assistance, and it is a horrendously hard process to get through. And I was actually pleasantly surprised by how simple this was to work through with your guys' guidance and the software that you guys have put in place to monitor everything that goes on. So if you are in the data business, you need Drata. It's that, to me, it's that simple. So you can't really operate a data, a company that operates with data. You can't really run that company without some help from a company like Drata. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about your team. So you had started telling us a little bit about the team structure, but maybe actually you were employee number 6 at Drata. So, and that, how long ago was that?
Oh, that was 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
It was
And
2
now,
years in December. So,
and now you have how many employees on your team?
I have 60 team members on the customer success team. So we have very
clearly something's going on here that's worth understanding better. So tell us about the growth trajectory of the company, and then let's talk about how you've set up your team and the roles that that the teams play. I think it'd be very helpful.
Absolutely. So I mentioned Adam gave me a call and said, hey, we have our first customers. We'd love for you to come build CS with us again. And so when we had that conversation, I was like, how many customers are you thinking we'll have in the first year? And he was like, 100 would be solid. And he's like, so you could do that by yourself? Like, of course, like I'd done that at Portfolio. No problem. I can be a one-woman show. So I started, and a quarter in, we hit that goal. And I said, hey, I think we need to hire some more folks. And he was like, let's do it. Like, we need to invest in this. The amazing thing about Adam and his vision for Drata is from day one, he was like, customers are the center of everything we do. If we don't treat customers appropriately and make them raving Drata fans, like, we won't make it as a company. And I think so many companies now understand that, where it didn't used to be the case in tech. But from day one, he's like, this is the most important. It's going to fuel our entire company. And so we started building out a team. Now, I think I feel very lucky that I was actually kind of the first CS person, and that I was being a CSM. I was doing the support line. I was doing all these things because I actually got the opportunity to feel what it was like to be in their shoes. So I quickly thought, you know what, this is complex. I can't be an expert on SOC 2 and 15 other compliance frameworks. I'm not an engineer. So we connect, we have, hundreds of integrations with your tech stack. I know the most I can about those, but I can't know all of that. So I was like, when I'm building my team, how do I ensure that it's really like a group of people with different skill sets? And so that's where I had been calling in our engineers to jump on calls with me with customers to solve their problems. Well, obviously that's not scalable. So that's when we hired our first solutions architect and have built out that solution architect team to really be the bridge between customer success managers and engineering. So the engineers can keep moving forward while we support the customers on the engineering side. And then the compliance piece came into play. Troy Fine, who is the director of risk and compliance on my team, he was an auditor at Schneider Downs, and he'd done hundreds of SOC 2 audits, and he was pretty much on my Slack speed dial when I would have compliance questions. Again, I knew the basics, but there's no way I could be an expert on every single one. So a few months in, we quickly said, Troy, we need someone like you on this team. And so he came to Drata and has built out a team of security and compliance experts. So when customers have questions that are compliance specific, we can say, talk to Troy. He's been an auditor. Right. Talk to Rick. He's been an auditor. And I laugh because people are a little nervous about auditors, but I always say, you can ask him a question. You don't want to ask your own auditor. Right. Yeah. So we've like just continued to build. I first said it was around the CSM. We built them a support network. Yes, it's for the customers, but I wanted the CSMs to be empowered to say, I have all these experts on my team. there's no way I'll ever know everything, but I have the right people to call in. And then obviously our technical support reps, they're in our app. So anytime someone has a question, they can write in and talk to someone immediately. So that team has been instrumental and really is a key differentiator for us as well.
Great. So we have a few more folks that have joined. If you're just signing in, we're meeting with Ashley today from Drata. She runs customer success for Drata, has been with the company since essentially its inception, and helped scale it up to where it is today. Drata raised at a $2 billion valuation, couple $100 million last year. With that as backdrop, let's talk about budgets. Right now, it's a very different economic environment from early last year when there was still a fair amount of growth activity going on. You guys are a growth company, but the macroeconomic scenarios are shifting. So the conversation today is really about budgets and how teams should manage budgets. And if anybody has any questions, please post them on the channel. We'll ask you. And if you'd like to speak up, let me know and I'll unmute you and you can ask your questions directly as well. So Ashley, question to you. How do you think about budgets in 2023?
Yes, I actually find it a blessing that myself and many of the founders of Drata actually were at a prior company, like I said, Portfolium, an ed tech startup. The largest we ever got was 32 people. We were not a big company. We did great things. We got acquired, but money was tight. Like you didn't know, you couldn't hire every person you wanted. You couldn't buy every tool that you wanted. And the reason I say that's a blessing is I think it gives us really good perspective about what you can do with a small team and what you can do with tighter resources. And so we always say we focus on responsible growth. And Tim, who leads our finance team, that is how he leads Drata. He says, we're not going to just burn the cash because it's there. We are going to responsibly grow so that our team is also protected. A lot of people are going through layoffs right now. We want to ensure that we're hiring responsibly so that hopefully that we don't get to that point. Now, things can change, but you have to make really intentional and well planned out decisions so that hopefully you can avoid that. So I think we've always tried to do more with less. Now, of course, we have opportunity to expand some of our resources, and I know that's what we're going to talk more about today.
Yeah. Okay, great. So again, just a message back to everybody here. If you have any questions around, how to manage CS budgets, please go ahead and post them here. So Ashley, I think in terms of scale, you guys have done incredibly well in terms of, this idea of responsible growth. Maybe elaborate on that a little bit. Like, what does that mean? Does that mean that employees that are part of Drata today are taking on greater ownership and responsibility for the account base so that you're managing within the spectrum that you currently have versus adding more people? Like what does that translate into? What are some of the key tenets that you can share?
Yeah, I think it was a little bit of what I was describing with how we have our 4 pillars. And that's might sound confusing because I'm saying we have 4 different groups of people on the CS team. But those specializations actually enable us to have our CSMs managing more accounts because it's not all on them. And I think that's a big message. We're actually at a offsite this week with our sales, marketing, and CS teams. I'm in a hotel right now. So we are just talking about how the entire company owns the customer journey. And I think one of the biggest mistakes CS teams and companies can make is saying, hey, you're the CSM. It's your responsibility to just ensure that they renew and stick around. And so I guess what I'm trying to describe is we have more brought in experts in particular fields who are supporting our CSMs to support our customers so that there's actually more ability to have a larger book of business. We also have been investing in technology, which I know we want to talk about today. We work with a lot of engineers. A lot of our customers are engineers, CTOs, CEOs who are simply get this put on their plate. And while we do have a model where, you have a designated customer success manager, we've also found through 2 years, many of these folks prefer to just do their work. And if they have a question, ask someone in our application. And that's where we're truly scaling our support team, because that's been the feedback we've gotten from customers. So I think a key aspect of this is listening to your customers, not forcing them into having a weekly meeting or certain cadences that don't work for their work style, and using data, which I'm sure we'll talk about as well.
Got it. I see Janelle wanting to ask a question. So I'm going to, Janelle, open up your line. Please go ahead and let's see if this works. Yep, you should be able to raise your question directly.
Hi. Thank you, Azim, for hosting. And Ashley, thank you so much. I am currently responsible for everything post-sales in my startup. And the way you are aligned with your leaders is how I'm aligned with my CEO. We are not going to be siloed. We're going to do things differently. Right. I'm, as you are, managing our customer base right now, and I'm balancing a hiring spree that will incorporate non-CSM types. So my question is around, when you knew that it was time to hire, how did you scale training and onboarding by yourself at the same time that you're managing your customer book of business? Because I'm having to create a training program, not just around our product, but around SaaS, because we're going after non-traditional CSMs. We're looking at teachers and service and retail industry people. So my training is double the process. So I'm just trying to figure out, how do I create a program that's successful and that I can scale while at the same time managing our entire customer base.
And Janelle, which company are you with?
I'm with a startup called Forecastable.
Okay.
So we specialize in really streamlining the process with sales pipeline management that streams over into now sales ops and customer success. And we're really heavy-handed in the co-selling partner ecosystem space as well.
Great. That's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'll be direct. When we were first hiring, we were so busy, which is a wonderful problem to have, but a lot of the training was literally like, okay, you're going to sit with me on phone calls while I'm working with these customers. Obviously that's not scalable and that's not what we do today, but for a while it was, well, you're riding along. And that's how we're going to dig in. But we've obviously transitioned that quite significantly at this point. I think for small companies, when you are in this like high growth mode, the best investment that we made, I'm going to sound like an advertisement, is we use Gong. And Gong is life-changing as a CS person, in my opinion. And the reason is it's like we're recording all of our calls. First off, amazing. We can send the recording to the customer if they want to review what we talked about. There's a lot of different use cases. They're having a challenge with the product. We can tag product team. We can tag the engineers. We can also do great coaching for new individuals. But I actually used it, and you could do this outside of Gong with just Zoom libraries if you wanted to. But we built out really distinct libraries of calls, trainings, videos that we've done internally so that they're referenceable. And it sounds so simple, but I've just heard from the team members, oh my gosh, I spent hours when I first started just watching these calls and like immersing myself in the business. So I think that's one thing that I would advise. If you don't have Gong or you don't want to, use a tool like that, you have Zoom, just record and like create a library and a Google Doc. Like, I think that's a great start. Most people learn in some way by observing and hearing and seeing. The other thing, I think we were lucky again to have past experience of working together. And we literally sat and said, what mistakes did we make then that we're not going to repeat now? And I would say the number one mistake I made personally, everything was in my head. Like, oh, there's a question here, I can tell you. And that does not scale. And so from day one, any process that you put down, you documented it. Anything is documented. And so our team always says, I've never been at a company that has so much documentation. It's incredible as you're coming in. So I don't think I'm giving you like golden tickets here, but I would just say, when you're making a process and you're like, I don't have time to write down how this works, or I don't have time, like, take the time. because when you have to do it when you've been there 2, 3, 4 years and the process has ballooned like crazy, it's going to be so much harder. And so we always talk through that. If you roll out something new, if you roll out a new product, whatever it is, you document it. And it's documenting it internally, but also for customers, like new features, that type of thing. I also, Janelle, be happy to share with you kind of like a draft of our onboarding for customer success, anyone in customer success. We have really a 3-week ramp until they're actually on calls with customers, but we also are very cross-functional. I personally love nothing more than working with my colleagues across the company. And so in that onboarding, we have times where you meet with the product team, where you meet with engineering, where you meet with all these parts of the business. Because like you said, we did that a little bit at Portfolio, where we're bringing in educators who have never worked in a place that has these departments. And literally sometimes it's just breaking down the barriers of, we're going to have a session with you and the product team. They're going to walk through with you what they do. Now we've made it more scalable because obviously we're hiring people at a pretty high level, where each leader of a department has actually recorded a whole video talking through how their department functions, how we work with one another. We are also completely remote. So I should have said that up front. Like, Slack video documentation is the only way we'll be successful. And I can't emphasize how you have to start it from the beginning, because it becomes too overwhelming if you wait multiple years. So hopefully that rambling helps.
That was super helpful. Yes, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Of course.
Yeah, we've got a couple of good comments here from Gary, who agrees with everything you just went through, Ashley, and the value of recording these calls, and also knowledge bases and tools that help with that onboarding process in our comments, and that's the ones he's calling out specifically. Okay, I'm going to shift gears a bit here, and you mentioned data and investment in technology. So let's talk a little bit about that. We've actually had multiple conversations around that over the past 18 months, Ashley, and we sort of watched that journey for you and how you've sort of invested into products and technologies and data to support your organization. Take us through that a little bit. Like, what tools were you using in the early days for the CS team as you were starting to hire? And then what does that infrastructure that supports the team look like today, and the difference between those two?
Absolutely. Yeah, you've definitely seen our data journey for sure. Yeah. And I'll be so transparent. At first we had no data. We had no data. We didn't have anything. And so as a customer success individual, you got on a call with a customer and you said, could you please share your screen with me? Let's walk through what progress you've made. Because we didn't know what progress you'd made. We didn't have that insight yet because we hadn't, been able to invest in that. And obviously, we made that work. So early startups, you make that work. You make it as you are more consultative. You're actually like teaching the customer to fish. It can be done, but obviously when you hit a certain number of customers, there needs to be more. And for us to be able to scale, we had to have data insights. And so, we started very simply in, okay, what are the key data points that we would want to have insight in before getting on a call with a customer? And we use a tool called Sigma currently in conjunction with Snowflake and several other items. But we also, as a company, invested in building out a data team. So we have a VP of data now who's really come in and bridged all the departments to figure out, okay, what are the key insights we need? But on the CS side, we're then taking those key insights and using tools like Intercom to actually like foster campaigns and drip campaigns about, let's say a customer hasn't logged in the last 30 days. Well, now we have insight into that and we can build out content with our marketing team to target those folks. So we went from being like, hey, the CSM's asking what they're doing. That's where we're at. And doing the best we could with that, to now, okay, we have insights into their usage of the tool. We use Amplitude to get a little more detail there as well. And that means we can start to not just focus on a person. It's a lot of pressure as a CSM. Like, you need to figure out where the customer's at, and then we need to fix it or continue them on that pathway, where now we can look at the data a CSM can have that insight before they even get on a call and help build out a project plan to getting them to the next step. So again, I think it's just going from being very scrappy, we'll take self-report information and build on that, to now actually having real insights that we can then work with marketing, product, et cetera, to expand how we interact with the customers. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. How do you measure the improvements in your team's productivity or your customer's experience of Drata, leveraging some of these tools that you've put in place? Like, is there some formal measure of ROI, or is there some formal measure of increases in productivity that you sort of pin this on and say, this is why I feel confident making this investment?
Yeah, I would say it's twofold. So one thing, we're very lucky in that our product is almost gamified in a way. Simi might agree there, in that literally when you get in Drata, your goal is to get to 100% passing tests.
Right.
And so kind of easy. We're like, they need to get to 100%. Where are they at right now? And how do we guide them forward? So obviously we can look at that and try to set benchmarks, 30 days out, what percentage do we think they should be at to be healthy? And so that's something we've been building, is a really informed health score. Now, we did exactly what every CS person would tell you never to do when we first started. Like, all the research you read, you can't create a health score until you're at least a year into your business. And I was like, well, so we're just going to sit around and hope for the best. So we hypothesized what we thought would mean a healthy Drata customer. We built that health score, and then we measured against it. Now, 2 years in, we're making some edits to our health score with the help of data. And so I think that's another thing to understand, is like, there's all these best practices out there. A startup doesn't have best practices. You need to do what it takes to get the information you need and continue to support your customers. And so we built a health score that gave us some insight. And really, our original health score was focused on onboarding and them getting going in the Drata system, and then feedback from customers. Obviously, feedback is so important. We literally beg customers for negative or positive feedback, because it's the only way we get better. And so it was a combination of usage of the product and their direct feedback.
So
now that we're
interject real quick? So I think that two data sort of streams of product usage versus what the customers are telling you. In your experience, which is a better representation of what's really going on in that account? What they tell you, or what you see is happening in that account?
That's an interesting question. So it's important who's telling you, is what the biggest thing is, because we see this with customers. You have your worker bee who does all the work to ensure that the system is moving forward. And then you usually have your person that signs the check. And we have seen, we could have a worker bee, as I call them, that adores Drata, that loves it, that tells us how wonderful it is. But if that person isn't making progress in Drata to show to their boss or whoever signs the check, that's not going to be enough. So I do think actually usage of the product is very key. If your main stakeholder is also the person doing all the work with some of our SMBs, that feedback probably trumps. But especially in this economic climate, we're seeing, the check signer is going to come in and say, well, how much have you done with the tool? What goals have we met? Did you meet any of those objectives you said you wanted to? Because people are having to make hard decisions right now. And so I think, as we move forward in that economic climate, we need to show that you use the product to reach your goals.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay. So there's a question here from Gary in the Q&A section. So about expansion and renewals for Drata. We will come back to this question in a moment, Gary. I want to continue the thread on, I did want to acknowledge your question. We will definitely get to it, but I want to continue the thread on data and tools for just a moment. So tell us a little bit about your tools journey, right? So you were on one set of tools and you moved to a different set of tools, and you invested internally on supporting your team with data. What were the what was sort of the motivate, like, if somebody were a fly on the wall at the meeting where you and your co-founder sat together and said, hey, I think it's time to make this change, what were some of those pros and cons and kind of conversations that that took place?
I think it was all about transparency and visibility. We were using a CS tool that essentially was a place to take notes, if I'm direct. Let's say a customer reached out to one of our founders and was upset about something or had a challenge. They would go into that system and they're like, I can't tell what's going on with this customer. I don't have any visibility. And we started thinking, for a long time, there are few enough customers that I'd be like, oh, I know the story. Here's what it is. But we're past that now. And so we knew we needed a place where people, no matter what department, could log in, look at a customer and see where they stood with our health score, with the CSM's notes, with product engagement, whatever it might be. And so that's when we said we have to find a tool that will create visibility across the company, because again, customer success is not just customer success's responsibility. The entire company is part of that. But if you don't give them visibility into it, I think it's really easy to point the finger at customer success when problems come up. And so I wanted to create visibility across the board so we could point to places in the journey where, hey, it'd be helpful for product to come in. It'd be helpful for this person to come in. So it was all about creating visibility. And then also for a CSM, the same thing, like so that they could go to an account they're getting ready to meet with and see very clearly, this is where they stand. Here's where I go next. So it's getting rid of all those blind spots, I think, was the biggest thing for us. Got
it. Okay. Let's move on to the question that Gary just asked about renewals and expansion. So the question says, how does expansion drive renewal for Drata? But I assume what it means is, how does your team participate in the expansion process? How do you identify those opportunities during the renewal cycle? So maybe take us through that a little bit. What does the renewal process look like for Drata, and how do you identify expansions?
Yes. And maybe it's helpful for me to explain our journey with renewals and expansion. The first year of Drata, CS owned renewals and expansion. So my team was responsible for renewing customers, for upselling them. And the challenge of a company growing so quickly is we'd bring on a new CSM. Within 2 months, their book of business would be full of new customers. So what that means that you don't think of at the time is, in a year, all those customers need to be renewed. And so that CSM owning renewals is, you have no time to continue to work with the customer on what your job actually is, ensuring they meet their business objectives, because you need to renew your entire book of business in 2 months. And so 3 of us went through renewing our whole book of business in that time. And we just said, this isn't going to work. Like, we need an account management team. So we have an account management team that reports into the sales side of the organization. And really they're embedded in the entire customer journey, so that it isn't just, hey, time for me to get money. Nice to meet you. We're showing the account management team as a resource throughout, but CS is still the one kind of on the front lines. So your question about expansion, really another cool part of our product is on one portion of our product, there's a meter that shows your readiness for a particular framework or audit. So let's say you're at 100% for SOC 2, you can see, well, if I purchased ISO 27001 from Drata, I'd already be at, I'm going to make up a number, 80% for that. So your work carries over from framework to framework. So I've actually heard from customers, they're like, well, once I saw that I was so close to that other one, I figured we might as well go for it, because it's going to improve your business outcomes, in that you are more secure, more compliant. And so we are able to see that data and then, identify an opportunity for an upsell. So I think our product supports upsells really well. But of course, the CSM, if they identify, oh, this customer is interested in X, they introduce the account management team. Our account management team handles the upsells from there. So it's a pretty basic model, but I also think ensuring your product supports these revenue streams as well is really important. Making it where everything in your product shows a value that would want or would encourage someone to buy more, basically.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. That's the modern way that software works, is to encourage you to use it and then show you what your next destination looks like and encourage you to move in that direction. So that's awesome. Okay, I'm gonna switch back a little bit to Ashley. So you've gone from a journey where, you mentioned your previous startup, you were at 32 employees, and then this, of course, has exploded. What's your personal journey been like from being the first CSM to being, leading a team of a pretty significant size? And obviously there's a, significant growth ahead of you guys. What did you as a leader have to do different to scale through each step in that journey? What was kind of your personal journey through this whole process?
I love that question because I mentioned we're at our offsite with our CS team and sales and marketing. And I walked into our welcome reception yesterday and I texted my husband and I was like, I'm so overwhelmed. There's so many people here because I was used to such a small team. And then, of course, COVID has played into that for all of us. You walk into a room with a lot of people and you're like, oh, my goodness. But I think as a leader, I'm going to be honest, it's been challenging, but very exciting in that I was used to being in the weeds of everything. Like I was answering support questions. I, again, was managing customer accounts. I was doing all of those things to just keep the wheels moving. And I think now I've had the privilege to bring in other leaders. But I think when you're used to being an on the ground startup leader, it's a very interesting muscle to flex, to step back and let other people take on challenges that you would have typically led the way on, or create new processes. We rolled out 3 new service models for our CS team that normally I would have been on the front lines for. And so I think the unique aspect is pulling yourself back, knowing that it's okay to pull yourself back and really push those leaders to the front and encourage them to take chances and try new things and iterate. And then if it doesn't work, we work together to find a new solution. So I think that's been the hardest, but also the most fun aspect for me as a leader, is just learning to step back and help guide rather than do. Because I think at startups, you're a doer. You're used to, you do it and you stay up all night and you get it done. And again, that's not scalable long-term, but it's certainly fun at first.
Great. Thank you, Ashley. This has been an awesome session. And I really appreciate all the insights that you've shared, the journey that you've shared from public health research to customer success, from Kansas to California. What's the next big transition that you're thinking about? What personal, professional, life, what's the next turn that you see around the corner?
I also have a 3-year-old, so I'm just like trying to get through a lot of days. But no, it's super fun to have that aspect of the world too, and to show a strong role model to a young daughter. I think that's a huge thing that I'm really focused on. I don't have any major personal plans coming up, but I think as far as with Drata, it's again just empowering and building a strong leadership team to take us to the next level. So
awesome. Great. Ashley, I think this has been wonderful. If people want to reach out to you, continue the conversation, or ask any questions, what's the best way to approach you?
Yeah, I'd love to connect on LinkedIn. That's kind of my best place. So reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'd love to chat more. I always love to set up calls with fellow customer success folks. We can learn from each other. No matter what your role is, we can learn and get new ideas from one another. Customer success is a very new field. And I think the best thing we can all do is just talk and share.
Great. Thank you so much for your time. For everybody who participated today, thank you for joining us, asking questions, and engaging in the dialogue and moving the conversation forward. For any of you that weren't able to join today, or you'd like to share this with your friends and colleagues, we will have a recording available on the website, immersa.co by end of day tomorrow. So you should be able to find that, and we'll also send that out to you in an email. We love reaching out and connecting with people who are interested in CS operations, data, AI, how to move this conversation forward. So if you have ideas, or you'd just like to have a conversation on that, you can reach out to me at asim@immersa.co or on my LinkedIn. And I look forward to hearing from many of you. Thank you for your time today.